may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
All right, we got some pretty big news here. Jeff Wilson, torn meniscus. Jeff Wilson not going to be ready for a very long time into the season. I know the report says that he's just going to miss the beginning of the season. But if you really dive into it, I mean, it's a 4 to 6 month timetable. And usually when you hear that kind of timetable, I mean, just say he doesn't get to practice until 4 months in. I mean, it's going to take him a decent amount of time to be able to get up to speed, to be able to actually be back in the rotation for this running back room. So if you go through and you go, okay, most likely, let's just assume he is going to be closer to being out 6 months rather than 4. That's going to put his return at the beginning of Thanksgiving week. And now I know that we are talking Dynasty here. I know we are talking about the long term. So most people are going to see this and just completely overlook it because they're going, Mason, we are evaluating Trey Sermon over the next 3-4 years. What does this have to do with his long-term Dynasty outlook? And to be honest, it has everything to do with his long-term Dynasty outlook, and we are going to be diving into depth on that. But before we do that, I owe a couple massive thank yous. First, I owe a massive thank you to Point God over there on Patreon, Point God in the Discord chat. Now, if y'all don't know, guys, I'm sure that a ton of y'all talk with him every day over there in that Patreon chat. But he makes all the thumbnails for every channel that we have across the Fantasy Flock network. And there is literally nobody more dependable. And I know that this does not sound true. I know that it sounds like I'm making up a lie. But literally, he has sent us thumbnails every single day over the past 18 months. He has not missed a single day. I'll send him a DM going, hey man, can you make me this? And it's made within 10 minutes. Now, if you are ever looking for someone to do any type of graphic design, if you have your own YouTube channel and you're looking for someone to make your thumbnails for you, I promise you, you are not going to be able to find someone better. I will leave his Twitter down in the description of the video. And also, I'm sure that a ton of y'all already talked to him over there on Patreon. Now, the second thank you that I need to give is to Sideline Sprint for sponsoring this video. Now, y'all know we have talked about Sideline Sprint a couple times now, and I just really believe in it. And honestly, it's not like they're trying to make money. It's not like they're trying to get you to spend any money. It's more so they're going, hey, we really like talking about sports. Let's just cover the sports, which we know ESPN simply does not do anymore. You know, ESPN, you're either hearing some story about cancer, you're hearing something about politics. I mean, just really nothing about sports. But no, Sideline Sprint just sends you out a quick update in your email with pretty much everything going across all the major sports, and it's usually less than a 5-minute read. It's completely free, it's informal, it's entertaining, and it's just the news you care about. So I will leave the link to that in the description of the video if you want to check him out. Of course, it helps this channel as well. But let's get into it. We already talked about Jeff Wilson being gone, and just say you're looking at Jeff Wilson being gone until Thanksgiving. I mean, this is going to be a scenario where now you have a running back backfield that's really just 4 guys. I know that you're saying just 4 guys, but 3 of them are straight up bums in my opinion. I mean, you have Wayne Gallman, you have Raheem Mostert, you have Elijah Mitchell, and more importantly, you have Trey Sermon. Now, I know there are reports coming out saying, hey, Wayne Gallman is the running back 2 in the depth chart behind Raheem Mostert, but please understand, guys, that this is all coach speak. I mean, this is what we talk about all the time. You really don't need to care. You don't need to even pay attention to what coaches are saying at this time of the year. What matters is action. What matters is what these teams are doing. And if you're looking at the investment that this team spent into Wayne Gallman, I mean, currently he is having $850,000 against the cap. Now, that is literally about the lowest number that you can have. The team investment from the 49ers was just going, hey, we need another backup running back here. We don't know if we were going to get the guys we want in the NFL draft, so let's go bolster this room just to make sure that we are going to have the depth, because just say they didn't have a player like Trey Sermon falling to a range where they wanted, just say they weren't able to trade up for him. Of course, they were going to need some more running backs in the backfield in the case that you were going to see a running back injury like a Jeff Wilson, because the last thing you need is Raheem Mostert to be the only guy in the backfield. I mean, maybe you just hand the ball off to Kyle Juszczyk. Of course, that's not going to happen. So please don't read too much into Wayne Gallman coming in. Wayne Gallman came in before the NFL draft. They did not know if they were going to be able to get the guys that they wanted in the draft. So really, it's just a depth piece. And this is pretty much all fluff, because the last thing you could do if you're the coach for the 49ers is come out and go, hey, you know what? Wayne Gallman, yes, we told you that you were going to have a role on this team. Yes, we got you to move all the way to San Francisco and sign for pretty much close to nothing. Now, we are going to be making sure that you are the last guy on our depth chart, not going to get any touches behind Trey Sermon. You can't say that. That's the last thing you can say. What you have to do, and what we see every offseason, what you see every NFL coach do, is pay respect to the veteran, especially the veteran that you just bring in, telling him that he is going to have a role on the offense. So do not read into this coach speak. It really does not mean anything at all. What you need to be focusing in on is you need to be focusing in on Trey Sermon. Now, we will cover Trey Sermon a little bit as a prospect. I don't want to focus in on it too much just because we've already done that in a couple videos now. But what I do want to talk about instead is the impact that this will actually have if Trey Sermon is more productive early on in his rookie season for his dynasty value. Because you play dynasty with a window where you're going, hey, I'm looking for production for the next 3-4 years. I mean, what happens in the first month of the season isn't that impactful if we were talking about the bigger picture. Where I am saying, to be honest, this is simply not true. To be honest, if you think about how the dynasty market works, Trey Sermon now having an easier path to getting opportunity right away, I mean, this is massive for him because you're looking at Trey Sermon as a running back that you are drafting in a range for his opportunity and not necessarily his talent. Now, I understand that Trey Sermon is an appealing talent. You see this with his profile. I mean, it was a 4-star guy coming out of high school. He goes to OU. He goes to Ohio State. I understand that really he never dominated at either school, but there were other great running backs in his respective backfields. He has okay size. I mean, it's definitely not ideal at 6 foot, 215 pounds. 22 years old. He's near the threshold that we are looking for with our running backs and their speed, and he's a decent receiving running back out of the backfield. So you look at him and you're going, hey, well, he's definitely better than a career backup at the NFL level. He's definitely better than a guy like Alexander Mattison, but you're not drafting him expecting him to be Nick Chubb. Why you're drafting him is you're going, hey, he went to a team and a team traded up to get him that has a really thin running back depth chart. So what you're wanting is you're wanting opportunity. So of course, when you are deciding to draft a Trey Sermon over a wide receiver, possibly like Terrace Marshall, because we understand that Trey Sermon is going in that wide receiver 2 tier. He's the only running back in that tier because there's no way, despite whatever injuries occur on the roster, that you can move Trey Sermon ahead of Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. So no, he is in that wide receiver 2 tier. If you look over on Patreon, where we've already updated our rookie rankings with this Jeff Wilson injury, you'll see that Trey Sermon doesn't move much. I mean, he doesn't move up into that tier with the top running backs, but he is going to be climbing over some of those tier 2 wide receivers. So with Sermon, we have to understand you're drafting him for opportunity, and now something just occurred for that opportunity to be easier to find in San Francisco. Now, the question is, how do we know that he is going to get the starting job? The question is, how do we know that Trey Sermon is going to have the opportunity to go through and increase his dynasty value within the first month of the season? And my viewpoint on this is what we always say with these running backs. It's ignore the coach speak, ignore Urban Meyer saying that Travis Etienne is lining up at wide receiver and he's only going to be a 3rd down running back. No, ignore that. Ignore the fact that we're hearing in San Francisco that the running back depth chart is Raheem Mostert, then Wayne Gallman, and then after that, Trey Sermon. No, that's all noise. None of that matters. I talk about this all the time. What matters is that team investment. And if we go through and we look at the 49ers right now, I mean, clearly Trey Sermon is the most invested into player in this running back room, where the team decides to trade their 12th pick in the 4th round and the 15th pick in the 4th round to go up and get Trey Sermon in the 3rd. Now, this is definitely more than what we were seeing with the other running backs. I mean, Jeff Wilson actually had $2 million of dead cap space, but torn meniscus. Now I think you can safely say, hey, if Trey Sermon gets this opportunity early on, and if he looks good, then what is the real impact going to be for Jeff Wilson if he's coming back around Thanksgiving? I mean, it's going to be slim to none, in my opinion. And then you look through the rest of the roster. I mean, Raheem Mostert only has $480,000 on dead cap right now. Then Wayne Gallman has $0 on the dead cap. So this team isn't really guaranteed into any of these running backs outside of Trey Sermon and Jeff Wilson. Now, I will say, given the Jeff Wilson injury, I think the probability of Raheem Mostert getting cut off this 49ers team is going to be significantly lower than what you would have said if Jeff Wilson remained healthy. But I mean, going through and trying to identify also who the more talented running back is between Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert, I think it's an easy answer. I mean, you look at what we actually had from the production and the efficiency marks from Trey Sermon in college. I mean, if we go through this very briefly, I mean, in 2017, with only 9 carries a game and a little over 1 reception a game, Trey Sermon almost averaged 70 total yards. Then in 2018, I mean, he averaged 11.7 carries, almost 1 reception for 80 total yards a game. Then 2019, with only 5.4 carries, 0.8 receptions, 45 yards a game. And I know you really don't want to be seeing the fact that he's just highly efficient and not getting a full workload at the college level. You'd much prefer seeing a running back getting that 20 carry a game mark, even if the efficiency drops a little bit. But what we have to do here is we have to look at the other running backs that were in the backfield with Trey Sermon, where in 2017, he was playing with Rodney Anderson. If you don't know who Rodney Anderson was, he was a very talented running back that just couldn't stay healthy. He also was at Oklahoma. He actually was on the roster for the Cincinnati Bengals for quite a time. I mean, I was having him stashed across almost all my taxi squads. Now, he still couldn't stay healthy in the NFL, so since then he has been cut, but he had the talent regardless. Then in 2018, he was running alongside Kennedy Brooks. Kennedy Brooks was a 4-star prospect in his own right. We know that Oklahoma, for whatever reason, I mean, it's a state you don't want to live in. It's a school you don't want to go to. I mean, hook 'em horns, that's all I have to say. But for whatever reason, they're able to bring in these top prospects year after year after year. And then in 2019, not only is he playing with Kennedy Brooks, a 4-star guy, he's also playing alongside Ramondre Stevenson, who is currently on the depth chart for the New England Patriots. He's a 4th-round pick this past year's NFL draft, and he was also a highly recruited prospect as well. Then in 2020, he finally gets out of those situations where it's so crowded in Oklahoma. He goes over to Ohio State, and with only 14.5 carries a game, 1.5 reception a game, he averages 120 total yards. I mean, that is elite efficiency. He's playing alongside Master Teague, who's also a 4-star prospect coming out of high school. So the college resume right now for Trey Sermon is pretty impressive. Where on the other hand, you're looking at Raheem Mostert, and so many people view him in an incorrect light. And this is why we were not investing into him at all going into the 2020 season, whenever he was being way overdrafted in both redraft and dynasty formats. Because you look at the larger sample, you go, hey, in 2019, he was the running back 38 in points per game. Now, the reason that people overdrafted him, the reason that he kind of shot up was because that 2019 playoff stretch for the 49ers, where it was only a 3-game sample. In those 3 games, he comes out and he averages almost 18 carries a game, 1 reception, 114 total yards, and he was just a touchdown monster in that playoff stretch. But that really skewed the perception of Raheem Mostert. We're going into 2020. We went, hey, fade the small sample, just like we were saying with Tyler Higbee. We were going, we do not want any part of it. And in 2020, he goes out and he only plays 8 games because he cannot manage to stay healthy. And in those 8 games, he was a high-end running back 3 by finishing as the running back 27 in points per game. So Mostert, really someone I am not interested in the slightest now that Trey Sermon is coming in. I'll be the first person to admit we looked at the 49ers draft and went, hey, they're not going to be in a range to take a Javonte Williams, to take a to take a Trey Sermon. So Raheem Mostert, at that point, I went, hey, this is a player that you can go pick up for pennies when people were paying dollars for him last offseason, and he may have a better depth chart right now. Now, of course, that doesn't hold true, so we just have to take the L there. Hopefully, nobody traded a 4th or a 3rd for Raheem Mostert like we were advocating for, because they do go and trade to get a much more talented running back in Trey Sermon. But a little quick sneak peek behind the curtain over there on Patreon. We did update our rookie rankings, and we did have Trey Sermon moving up a spot. Just because you're looking at him, you're going, hey, this is someone you're betting on the opportunity with. Now, it's a little bit easier for him to find that path to opportunity if he gets it at the beginning of the season and he is successful for it. I mean, very rarely are you going to see a running back that really has no pedigree like a Jeff Wilson come in and take work away from a successful NFL running back. And of course, I'm not saying that Trey Sermon's going to be that right away. Of course, I'm not saying that's guaranteed, and that's why Trey Sermon still is at the bottom of that tier 2 of players after the blue chip prospects for me. But still, I mean, now you see an easier path to that opportunity. So at the very minimum, he has to be sliding up draft boards a little bit, but don't get too excited. You can't have him over Javonte Williams. You can't have him even in the same breath as those other top running backs. And I still would prefer the wide receivers we really like a Devontae Smith, like a Jalen Waddle, like an Elijah Moore. I would definitely rather have them over Trey Sermon. But of course, you can find our currently updated rookie rankings over there on Patreon. Like I said, those are going to be updated throughout the course of the entire offseason. I mean, if you see Julio Jones get traded, get ready to see Kyle Pitts maybe make a jump up 1 or 2 spots. So yeah, that's it, guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. Please go to the comment section. Please let me know what y'all are thinking about the jump up with Trey Sermon. And yeah, that's it. I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I really owe a massive thank you for all the Patreon supporters in Ben, Braden, Zach, Ryan, William, Derek, Justin, Marshall, Tyler, and Eamon. Thank you so much, guys.